Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today. So today we have a special guest. She's very special to me, Nicole Jansen, because she helped push me into getting into the podcast arena. So for Nicole, over the last 30 years, she's coached and trained thousands of leaders. She's helped them achieve extraordinary results in business and in life. She is a certified human behavioral specialist, business breakthrough coach, and a strategic intervention coach. Nicole's developed her own special brand of mentorship, which focuses on tapping into your strengths and your true purpose, integrating business and life mastery principles for lasting success. She's also the founder of Discover the Edge. Her passion for transformation and growth extends to the next generation of leaders. And she teaches and empowers people in that way to embrace their strengths and their passions through conferences, workshops, and one-on-one coaching and mentoring. And some fun facts: when she's not interviewing amazing podcast guests or working with clients, Nicole enjoys spending quality time with her family and friends, reading, jogging, and walking the beaches of sunny California. So welcome to the podcast, Nicole. I'm thrilled to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Lynn. I appreciate it. And yeah, one of my favorite things is walking the beach. And I do post a lot of those pictures on Facebook and Instagram, and people seem to really enjoy it, especially coming from Toronto, where I originally was from. There are no beaches there. So not beaches like what we're talking about here.
Right.
I know you're in Florida, and so you get the opportunity to go to the beach. It's just a blessing. So yeah.
It is. So where's your closest beach?
Carlsbad. Yeah. So it's San Diego, North County. And so it's about 20 minutes north of San Diego City, the city of San Diego. And it is absolutely lovely. I love it here. I'm just so grateful.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all part of that. When you talk about health and living a
Mm-hmm.
healthy lifestyle, one of the things that for me is getting that time by myself just to walk the beach,
Mm-hmm.
put my bare feet in the sand, connect to nature, and breathe in the fresh air, and do it. Of course, we're through COVID. Do it, at a distance from everybody else. But I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the beach was always my favorite place to go on my own, just chill out there. But as I've gotten older and my skin realized that this wasn't too healthy, I stopped doing it. But we actually live on a lake, so
Nice.
I get to commune with nature, sit out there and watch our lake every morning. So that's really beautiful.
Nice.
Love that.
Well, I can see the green behind you, and it's lovely. So
it is lovely.
Yeah.
It is. So we are going to talk today a little bit about your story when it comes to this wonderful phase of life, perimenopause and menopause. So these are the women that I really connect with, and I wanted you to share a little about your story and where you're at.
Yeah, so I'm used to, on my podcast, I talk about business, I talk about transformation, leadership, all of those things. But when we were talking, and I was thinking, well, this whole perimenopause has been quite a fascinating experience. So I'm a driver. I'm an action taker. I'm always on a go, right? That's kind of my thing. But what I've noticed is over the last few years is that, and I've always had some issue with hormones and had to be aware of it, taking certain supplements to compensate for that hormone imbalance. But I noticed over the last few years gaining weight and thinking, why am I gaining this weight? It's can't be those chocolate chip cookies. I haven't had that many of them. I'm super healthy and eat healthy, live healthy, and so forth. And so first of all, I started gaining weight and I didn't know why. Like I gained 35 pounds.
Wow.
I've lost a little bit of it, but I'm still 25 pounds heavier than I was before. And so that's been interesting. And then this year, at the beginning of this year, started to get this wake up call, like it was starting to accelerate, where My cycles were not as regular or temperate as they were before, and they were more intense. And it was just like, what's happening? Initially, when it first happened, I thought I was panicking. I thought I need to run to the hospital, quite honestly. But and my mother has passed away, and so I didn't have the opportunity to call her. She never really talked about her own experiences with it. So I reached out to a friend of mine and said, who's local here, and she's an older lady, and she said, "Oh, like I didn't even know what to." I was just like, I have a problem here. I might need to go and get this checked out. And she said, "Oh, that's what happens." And I think that speaks to a lot of times there's very little information out there. So a lot of times we just don't know what's actually happening to our bodies. And so once she affirmed and she said, yeah, that's what happened to me. And so it's not a problem. Clotting is, all this stuff. Then I started to, I was like, okay, that's what's going on. And then throughout the year, I've noticed like my hormones has been going a little bit more crazy, and hot flashes and all of these different things. And here again, I'm someone who is health conscious. I wake up early. To your point about the skin and the sun, I go to the beach early before the sun gets too high where I'm not frying my skin. I walk early in the morning. I eat healthy and so forth. To start having these things happen, I'm like, what is going on? And so hot flashes. Then I found out that I discovered just not that long ago, actually about a month or so ago, I discovered a cervical polyp. And so I needed to get that removed. It was quite large, so I needed to get that removed. So then there was like all of the issues around that, and not feeling well and feeling bloated and all of this that was going on. And so it's like it came full force in many different ways. It's just a kind of a bit of a taste. And so I started to obviously look for some solutions on that. We can talk about some of those solutions that have helped me to kind of balance things out, and discover a new normal, if you will. I know that's kind of a buzz phrase nowadays, but to discover what that needs to be in order for me to feel well and to be at my optimum, all the, the level of excellence that I want to be able to bring to others. Because if I'm all over the place, then it's hard for me to be fully present, when my hormones are going all over the place or something. So yeah, I've been able to balance that out. It's been good.
Yeah, a lot of people are in that same boat that you were mentioning. Our parents didn't seem to talk about that very much to us. And so for many people, they hit this phase of life and they wonder, what is this that's happening to me? And so it's really important to, especially if you've got children, to make sure that you do have that conversation with your daughters. Let them know that, hey, this is coming, this is what you can expect. Because I don't know why as a society we don't talk about it. I know certainly in England, it was the last thing my mother would ever have talked to me about.
Well, and I think that's with my mother being German, right? So she grew up in Germany. And so that European, you didn't talk about these things. Everything's fine. I worked through it. I'm fine.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, but what can we learn from that? And that's why even your podcast is so important for people, that if they didn't have a parent a mother who explained this, or for men, they have their own situations that they go through. They didn't have a father that told them about it. Then having someone like you who can say, I've been through it, I'm willing to talk about it, and I can learn, we can learn from people like you that are, in it and or on the other side of it. And so, very valuable.
I'm on the other side of it.
Well, yeah. I'm looking forward. I don't even know. The interesting thing is perimenopause. And so as I've talked to women about this and mentioned that this is like, even some of my friends who are a little bit younger, and they said, I had no idea that was a possibility, because when I started to research, and so this is getting very detailed, but with my cervical polyp, before I knew what it was, I had started to Google because I had certain things happening. Leave that to the imagination, but I was like, what is happening? And so I started going online, and then it started talking about uterine prolapses. And I'm like, my uterus can prolapse? What what? And so I was actually talking to a couple of very close friends, and they said, I've never heard of that. I never knew that was even a thing. And so, there are exercises that can help to reinforce your, the pelvic floor, the Kegel exercises and so forth. I had never heard of these, and so now I found out that wasn't really the issue, but it put me down this path of like, what is that? And then started to share it with some of my friends who were a little bit younger, my girlfriends, and saying, by the way, you might want to prepare yourself, because these are some of the things that women, and a lot of women, are experiencing that nobody talks about. Like you said, nobody talks about these things. So it's been a great learning experience, not one that I at all expected to have in the last several months, but here we are.
Yeah, so. It is very interesting because people who have been maybe skinny all their lives suddenly have this stomach that they've never had before, or the bloating. Their mood swings can be dramatic for some people, and then for others, they don't even notice that much of a difference. But some people I know feel like they're going crazy and they don't understand what's going on with them. And some people don't even realize that you can even just through a healthy lifestyle really help yourself to get a handle on it. So when I went through mine, I really didn't think I would go through it because of the prolapsed uterus. I actually, and polyps, fibroids, other things, had a hysterectomy. The doctors never talked to me about what alternatives were. It was just like, this is what's happening. But they left my ovaries, and even though they were riddled with endometriosis. So they cleaned those up. Then I went through this after hysterectomy and menopause as well. And it was not a very nice experience at all. But I've learned so much since, and so much as a health coach, that if I could do my life over again, the hysterectomy is probably one of the things I would not have done, because nowadays there are alternatives. Not that it's fun to go through perimenopause and menopause, but to go through it naturally is a whole lot better than if you have to suddenly. My mum had a total hysterectomy and went through the whole thing, never said a word throughout it.
Yeah, my mother had a hysterectomy as well, and maybe that's why she had different symptoms, or just didn't talk about them as much, because she attributed, she was tough, right? Again, German, everything's fine. She was very doctor adverse. But to your point, I have heard so many women talk about either having had a hysterectomy, partial or full, or being recommended to have it. And I think for me, I guess I look at it and say, that's, to me, would be the last resort. Like, let's figure out what are the solutions. And even with me, before we remove anything, before they removed anything, I was like, wait a second, why is this happening in the first place? And so what can I do naturally? And then when I spoke to my natural path, he in natural homeopathic, he does a whole bunch of disciplines. And he said, yeah, it's because of this that your system has developed this, right? And we can deal with that. And you may want to just still have it removed because it's uncomfortable, and because it's grown so large that it may be just best to just have it removed, and then we can take care of. But to me, a lot of what's happening in medicine is, well, you just deal with the symptoms, and then the root cause doesn't get addressed. And so then it just shows up somewhere else. Right. And I learned this like years ago, about 22 years ago. I went through where my body was literally shutting down, and the doctors wanted to give me shots, regular shots. They said, this is what my life would be like. You'd have to have regular shots for all of these allergies that you have. And, you'd have to do all these things. And to me, it just didn't feel right. And it wasn't that I was just resistant to it. It just didn't feel right. And it didn't sound like that was the best solution. And so I didn't see that as the picture that I had of my life. Besides the fact that I do not like needles. So, you know, I just looked at that and I was like, this doesn't make sense. And so then I started going, and up until that point, I really didn't know much about the body and how it worked and so forth. But I started to research autoimmune disorders and, you know, all of the different things that were happening, the leaky gut, my digestive system shutting down, the skin issues, all how your lymph works and your thyroid and all of these different aspects of it. And I found alternative ways to deal with the issues that I was facing and get to the root cause of it,
Right.
so that I wouldn't have to, you know, do it. Because if I would have left it, I know there's some great doctors out there. In this case, with the doctors that were advising me, if I would have left it to them, I would have been fully medicated and probably end up with, you know, I was on the path to diabetes and cancer and so forth. And it's like, you know, chemo and radiation and all of those solutions that they started to introduce to me and saying, well, when you get it, then we can do this. And I'm like, well, wait, hey, hang on a sec. I actually don't want to get to that point. So what can we do right now to prevent this from continuing down this path? And so learning in that process, the importance of giving your body the right nutrients, so that I believe our body is designed to heal itself,
Yes,
but
me too.
we don't put the right things in. And so it's deficient and, or it's overtaxed with stress and pollution and so forth, that it just can't function the way that it's designed to function. And that's
Right.
been my experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I totally agree with that. And here in Florida, we can't even get to naturopathic doctors because they are not allowed a license here, so they can't practice here. And finding a functional medicine doctor is very difficult. So for a lot of people, they have to learn to be their own health advocate with their doctor and really step in and really push on the fact that hey, there has to be some alternative for me. I don't want to go that route. And I've done that a lot with my own doctor. Him knowing that I'm a health coach has probably given me a little bit of leeway to push and say, no, I'm not doing that. I want to do something more natural. So I've been struggling myself with, for the last 7 years, with a high potassium, and they had no idea why I had the high potassium, but it can be very serious. So I finally had to say to him, look, there has to be a reason that this is happening. It doesn't just happen. There's got to be a cause for it. And we have to look for the root cause. So I pretty much told him the route I wanted to go, which was to go to a nephrologist first. And it's really funny to me because I've been seeing this nephrologist for a few months, and he's now done 3 blood tests on me. Not one of them has shown that I have high potassium. Not one of them. So I'm really kind of thinking this is really weird if I had 7 years of blood tests that really weren't accurate, because the nephrologist goes in and calculates different portions of that blood work to give you a ratio. And so according to that ratio, my potassium is not high. So I have actually been on this disgusting medication for the last 5 years to lower my potassium. And now I'm wondering, did I really have to do that? So yeah, we have to be our own advocate, but we also have to use some common sense, because I know that high potassium can affect your heart and can be a real problem. But I am so thrilled to find out that according to him, it's fine and I don't have to take this nasty stuff now.
Wow.
So doing our own research and pushing and being our own health advocate can really be powerful in our lives.
Absolutely. And I think that us not doing that is, there's a difference between delegating. I teach this to my business coaching clients too, right? It's like, there's a difference between delegating and abdicating. So you can delegate to someone who is an expert to say, this is your area of expertise. You're trained in this. You study in this regularly. You stay up on it. Like you being a health coach, you study this kind of thing, is to ask those questions and to go to those people that are experts and find out what they've learned in the process, rather than trying to be an expert in everything. Then there's abdicating, which is just letting somebody else tell you what needs to happen. One of the most ridiculous signs I saw. It was in Redding, California, when I was up there a couple of years back. And it was this sign for this healthcare facility, and they focused on health, heart health. And they said, "You only have one heart, trust it to us." And I'm like, oh, hell no. All right. Like, I'm sorry. Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm not going to trust it to you and abdicate it to you, because it's my responsibility. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, something goes wrong, I'm the one who's really going to pay for it with my life and or my health. And so it's interesting, because back, like I say, the first time around with my health, the doctors, they were like, "Oh, well, it's contact dermatitis. You're bloated and you got skin issues. It's contact dermatitis. You got to change your skincare." And I'm like, okay, skincare, makeup, changed it all. Now what? Because I've done all that. Well, no, it's just, this little thing. And then as I was actually starting to research it more, they didn't see it as a serious thing. But as I started to research it, and then I went to homeopathic doctors, and even when you go to homeopathic doctors or naturopathic doctors, the first one I went to gave this whole reading. And this isn't just well, we think this might be, you might want to try this. It's actually, I went to those that could test it and say, they put you up on they hook you up on a machine and they can test the frequency. So there's electroderma testing, so forth, right? And they say, well, said, "You're allergic to all these things. This is what's happening." And I said, okay. And then I went to somebody else and they said, "I just wanted to get a second opinion. This is my life we're talking about here." So I went to another naturopath, and they tested me, but they said, "Well, what did the first person say?" I said, no, we're not going to do that. You tell me, and I want to compare notes. And they literally were saying exactly the same thing. And two very, different approaches, modalities, both saying the same thing. And I went, okay, so there's something to this. And then I started digging further into that. And then then I discovered all the things that I'd had in the past that I realized, oh, that's why this happened. Or mono, for example, where I had mono prior to that. And all the doctor said was, "You're going to have to sit and lay on your couch for the next 6 months and let it deal with it on its own." And I'm like, so why is this happening in the first place? Well, we don't really know. And I never once was told that it was an autoimmune disorder.
Right.
Until years later, I read a book and I'm like, oh, that's what that was? Okay, so now we're starting to see a pattern. And so to your point, we've got to take ownership of our own health. And it's a balance. It's not that I discount doctors. I was just recently at a doctor, and a wonderful doctor that was able to help with, with this polyp and removing it and so forth, and had great information. But I don't just abdicate and say, "You just tell me what to do and we're just going to do it." I think it through and I check in with myself. And one of my guests, Philip Shepard, who was on the show a number of years ago, talks about the embodiment process and how the body actually is speaking to us all the time. We don't just have 5 senses. We probably have like 500 senses in our body in different variances, where our body is actually talking to us and telling us, giving us information about where it's at. Sorry, that's my cat just waking up. Is to where we're at. And so what often happens, though, is we are so disconnected as a society to our own bodies. And what's happening is that when we get a pain, we say, "Oh, we can power through that. I'm not going to deal, like, I'm tough, right? I can handle that. Oops, sorry. I can handle that, right? But I look at it and I say, yeah, I can handle it, and I can power through it. And yet at the same time, I'm asking myself the question, where is it coming from? And what is my body trying to tell me that is important? Hey, you're tired. You're not taking care of yourself. You're deficient. I went to one person, I've been to so many with different modalities and so forth. And one said to me, "You're really deficient in collagen." This was a number of years back. And I said, "Really? Nobody's ever told me that before." And so she said, "It's like 0.001, like it's very, very low." And so I started taking collagen. Well, started taking, I didn't think about collagen being an issue. I was in my 30s, late 30s. When I started taking collagen, all of a sudden, all the trauma and the things that I was dealing with my skin, all of a sudden my skin started to get softer and more, more youthful and vibrant. And my muscles and my joints started to, be more mobile and so forth. Like I felt better, right? Wow. Right. So there's all of these things, and it is a journey. It's a process. And I think a lot of times we just don't want to bother, and that's why, again, I come back to what you're doing and giving people, not that you have to have all the answers, but that you're giving people an awareness about this, and maybe even some accountability to paying attention. There's so much that we can do. One of the things, hopefully this is helpful for your listeners, is that some of the things I'm sharing here, one of the things that was helpful to me even back then, when all of these things were happening and I was going through it, I had done all of the physical things that I was told that I needed to do. And then there was a point where I hit this plateau, and it just, I wasn't getting any better. And that's when I started looking at the emotional connection. I said, it's got to be something. And I started looking at the emotional connection, the mind-body connection, to why these things were happening. And that's when I started healing those areas, started taking to the next level. So there's, again, it comes back to that accountability and having somebody even working through you and with you and discovering through the process, so that you can stay on it. Because the easiest thing to do is to say, oh, I'm feeling better now, and then put it aside. But there's so much that we can do, whether it's through gratitude, whether it's through like some of the things that even recently I've had nurses, like I said, from the medical industry, that also recognize the value of supplements, that have recommended, and we can talk about that if you want, some things that I've used now for my, for the balancing the hormones and the hot flashes and all of those things, to be able to equip me. And it's a daily, it's a routine. Sorry.
That's okay.
It's a routine that, that is, you just kind of incorporate it into your life, because it's a lifestyle, right? It's that healthy lifestyle that you're talking about. What we put in our bodies and what we foster in our bodies, even in terms of our mindset and our emotions and how we process our emotions, directly connects to our physical situation and how we feel, our physical health.
So what are some of the things that you've done to help you currently?
So one of my new favorite supplements is maca, M-A-C-A, maca root. And I started taking that. This RN had recommended that. And just really, she's a friend of a friend. And so my friend, when she found out about this, I was talking to her and she said, well, maybe you want to talk to Lindy about this. And so Lindy was like, oh, I have lots of things that I've already started to incorporate, and I can recommend them to you. But again, she also has 23 years of experience from a medical perspective as well. So she's looking at both sides, which I really appreciated. So maca is one of the things. I'm looking at a list here, red raspberry leaf tea. And that regulates your cycle. So that was really, really good. She mentioned collagen as well, which I was already taking, which was excellent. Vitamin C, omega, the 369 blend, diatomaceous earth.
Yeah.
Wow. I had never heard about that. I had been taking another type of mineral clay internal detoxifier, but she told me about diatomaceous earth. And so I've been taking that. Really amazing. Also the Kegel exercises, right? So for the pelvic floor, to be able to strengthen that. It's not a muscle that we naturally use or exercise. We might exercise our legs or our arms or whatever, but just with intention to exercise that, because that's what, for those that have not heard of it, it's what that pelvic floor is, what keeps everything in place. So otherwise, and when women have babies, which I have not, a lot of that will be so probably women who have had babies, maybe their doctor has told them about it. I hadn't, so I didn't think this was like I never really thought this would be a thing for me, even if there was a thing, if that makes sense. Another thing was the castor oil, doing warm castor oil packs. And she also mentioned sacral music, right? There's a frequencies, right? So when I go to my naturopath in here in California, he actually sets me up on a machine for 30 minutes after I see him, and he sets it at a certain frequency to be able to, because we're all energy, right? So our bodies operate a certain frequency. And so she had mentioned to me about sacral music and finding music that is that deals with the sacral chakra, the root chakra, like whatever it is that people are finding that they have an issue, and then finding music that actually is set for that frequency to address that. And then of course there are yoga, Tai Chi, some of those different ones you can do later. But in my case, because I was in a position where I was not able to work out or exercise or even walk very long, that was not on the table. But ultimately, to be able to do that, acupuncture, she mentioned, also the yoni eggs, doing that as well, and breathing. Another one which I really appreciated, she said, you got to visualize it, right? Visualize the outcome, which of course I teach that to my clients as well, is what is the outcome that you're looking at? A lot of times what we focus on is we focus on what is, and we speak what is, and our words create our world. So if we speak illness, if we even take that on as, like, people say I'm a diabetic, or my depression or my anxiety, and we take ownership of it, it's very hard to get rid of it.
Right.
And so to speak and to envision, health being restored, right? I am healthy, I am strong, I am lean, I'm vibrant, I'm whatever it is, even visualizing if something's out of place with a uterine prolapse is like visualizing it being fully restored, or being fully healed from that experience. She mentioned that, and I so appreciated that, based on, of course, my own understanding of mindset and the power that we have with our mind.
Right. Some women I know get a lot of help from black cohosh. It helps with the hot flashes. And for a lot of people that aren't eating a healthy lifestyle, I mean, sugar is really so very bad, especially
Yes.
during the hormonal imbalance stage, any kind of processed foods.
Yes.
So it's always one of the first things I mention to people is to start shopping on the outside of the grocery aisles and not purchasing the processed foods, because that will really hinder your ability to recover, or for your body to heal itself or feel better if you're putting that stuff into your body.
Great point. And I guess I kind of overlooked that only because I was already doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, dark leafy greens. She mentioned even green smoothies, because I was at a point where digesting food was difficult. So, and I wanted to relieve any of the pressure that might be on, of like having a full, bladder, or a full, colon.
Right.
I was concerned about that. So, turning my salad into a smoothie, was one way of doing it. But yes, to your point, if it's from a package, it's been processed. And what I think a lot of times people don't realize is that, and they kind of maybe intellectually know it, but really thinking it through, is that when we eat something from a package, it's been sitting there, it has been processed so well. It's food, but it's not really food.
Right.
And your body goes, what is that? And so it's hard for it to process things, because your body is only able to process things that it's familiar with, right? And that are designed for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you have a car, if you have you don't even need to have a Ferrari, but if you have a car and you put something other than gasoline in it, you decide that you're going to pour Coca-Cola in it or something else, it's not going to run the same.
Right.
It's designed for a specific set of nutrients. And so when I started to eliminate those things out of my diet, I mean that, and you talk about the sugar, that insulin spike and all of that is, yeah, that's a no-go. You know, get rid of the sugar. It tastes good. It tastes good to our, you know, to our palate. And I think part of it is also psychological,
Yes.
because we're told that it's a pleasure. And so we like, I feel good. I feel like I want to treat myself, right? So I go and I go get some chocolate or some ice cream, because we're so marketed to that that's what's going to make us feel good. But it also does make us feel good because it is the sugar, it is the sugar that kicks in. There's that pleasure, that immediate pleasure, but then there's the later pain. And so what I've learned for myself to reframe that for myself is that when I feel like I want to have something that I know it's like, it's not really good, but I kind of crave it at that moment. What I do is I don't focus, because what we focus on expands. So I don't focus on, oh, I'm going to have that great pleasure, it's going to taste so good going down. What I focus on is, how is this going to make me feel later? And I focus on that and say, is it worth it? No, it's not worth it. Right. And I think about a gentleman once who he was about 30 years old, very hip, popular. The girls loved him, really good looking guy, fit. And he would go to these clubs and his friends, and they would all drink and so forth. And he never would drink any alcohol. And they said, well, it's like, what's wrong with you, Luch? You know? And he's like, why would I go to the gym 5-6 days a week and to optimize my health and then put junk in my body? Why would I do that? And so to him, he's like, I can have a great time and I don't need that stuff. And that was his choice. And so it's just choosing. I think there's a decision that we make, rather than being on autopilot about what we're putting in our bodies, but actually thinking through beyond the immediate pleasure of how it might feel. And or if you're going to do it, like I think about, if I'm going to have something sweet, I'm going to make sure that it's something that I really enjoy. I'm not going to go get the cheap chocolate bar that is going to have a marginal, good taste to it, but it's kind of like that quick hit. I'm going to go for the truffle. If I'm going to do it, it's going to be really, really good. And then it's interesting. You only need a small amount of that, but that's a really, really great point. Yeah.
So that's exactly the way that I always treated my migraines. It was the same mindset. So I love cheese and I love chocolate, but cheese is a trigger for me for migraines. So I always had to look at it from the perspective of, I can enjoy this now for a short time. Tomorrow I'll wake up with a migraine. Do I really want to risk it? And so I learned to say no to a lot of things, because in the long run, I was going to feel lousy and it wasn't worth that momentary satisfaction.
Yes. There's actually something, speaking of the chocolate, that my naturopath recommended to me, and it has actually been working. I still like my chocolate here and there, but he actually, because I mentioned that my vice was chocolate. And not that I had tons of it, but I was like telling him, this is where I'm at. And he said he provided, it's like raw cacao powder, is it cacao or carob powder? I always forget.
I call it cacao.
Yeah. So that's the English way of saying it. So raw and no sugar added, because a lot of the ones out there, but you just get the organic, raw, pure. He said what that will do is, there's something from the chocolate that your body is craving, and that will provide it, so you'll have less cravings for it. It's easier to abstain from it if you don't crave it and your body is not saying, I really need whatever, because sometimes it is something in that, or the cheese, sometimes it's the taste, but sometimes there's actually something in it. So looking at and saying, what is the thing that my body is actually craving, and then getting it met some other way.
Because sometimes we're deficient in something, and our bodies are really good at telling us that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to wrap it up, I'm going to ask you a funny question that I already know the answer to for you, but dogs or cats?
Well, cats, I actually love both. I love both. I have a cat because dogs have to go outside and you got to pick up their poop. And I don't think that's fun. Although it's funny because I do it through my his cat litter box. But yeah, I actually grew up with dogs and loved dogs. I love both dogs and cats, but I have a wonderful cat who's like a dog in a cat's body and who follows me around everywhere. So I get the best of both worlds.
And one other silly question, if you could have any superpower in the world, what would it be?
Any superpower in the world? The first thing that came to mind is I would love the ability to fly.
Ah, yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah. It's also handy in LA. I don't live in LA anymore, but when you go there, it's like traffic. Your traffic zones, you just fly over. That'd be fun.
So I'm going to put in the show notes all of your information where people can contact you. And if they need a business or leadership coach, you would be, in my estimation, the person to go to. So I will put everything in there for people to find you. And do you have any parting words of wisdom for our listeners?
Oh, well, thank you. First of all, thank you. I appreciate you having me on the show, and it's been fun. And I know this is kind of a unique interview in the sense that you often will interview people that are health experts and so forth. But is health is wealth. And that's what I would leave your listeners with is it's not enough to just focus on making money, building a business, a career that is successful. If you don't have your health, the rest of it's not going to matter. And so it's really, really important. And when I work with my clients, I actually do address not like you do, but I check in with them where they're at on their relationships, where they're at of course, their business, because I want them to come back to me and say, Nicole, I love my life. Then I know we've created success.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time today. I know that you're always very busy podcasting and coaching. So thanks for taking the time out to speak with us today. And really appreciate your words of wisdom here.
It was a pleasure. And fun talking about a different topic. Very vulnerable
yes.
topic, but it was fun. So thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Have a great day.
You too.